Hey there, this is Dennis Anyone with Dennis Hensley. It's a podcast about making things up and making things happen. I love talking to creative people. And today my guests are two people. They're the men behind the movie You Can't Stay Here, filmmaker Todd Verow and actor Guillermo Diaz. And they produced the movie together. It's a story about a photographer who gets involved in the world of cruising in the rambles of Central Park. And it has all kinds of effects on his life. It reminded me a little of Cruising and a little of Blow Up, and it's just kind of dark and sexy and surprising, and it's cool that they made it. So I was excited to talk to them about it, and it's going to be showing soon in New York, so that's exciting. But before I get to the interview, I want to remind you that this podcast, Dennis Anyone, is brought to you by Stay Puft Marshmallows. No, it's not. I don't have any sponsors. It's just me. I do it, but I love it, and if you like it too, there are two ways you can support the podcast. You can go to DennisAnyone.net, and you can leave a tip in my virtual tip jar, help me cover my expenses. And I have to tell you guys, I got 2 tips in one day recently, and they were on my phone, and I was like, oh my gosh, it just felt so good. It meant a lot to me. So thank you to Robert N. and also to Warren D. for their tips that came in on the same day. It just meant a lot. And it's a great way to round out the year. So thank you so much for that. The other thing you could do is you could become a subscriber to DNR Studios. I'm part of a group of shows under the Derek and Romaine banner. And for a monthly fee, you get my show early and you get all these other great shows. So go to dnrstudios.com to learn about that. All right, enough of the plugs. Here now is the interview with filmmaker Todd Verow and actor Guillermo Diaz from the movie You Can't Stay Here. Joining me now from New York and LA, it's a bi-coastal affair. We've got filmmaker Todd Verow and Guillermo Diaz, the star of the movie You Can't Stay Here. Welcome, guys, to the podcast.
What's up, man? Thank you for having us.
I'm excited.
Hey.
I saw a post about this on social media, and I was like, I got to talk to them about this movie. So we sent a few emails, and here we are, rounding out the year with your creepy ass film. Congrats on it. Todd, you are the filmmaker, the director. How would you describe the movie to someone that knows nothing about it?
It's a movie about cruising and how exciting and dangerous and thrilling cruising can be.
Right on. Guillermo, how did you get involved in this? Have you guys known each other for a long time?
We haven't known each other for a long time. No, I was in New York City on a job about 2 years ago, and I was I just creatively I wanted to do something different from what I was doing at the time. It wasn't very sort of fulfilling creatively. So I thought to myself, well, who are some of the filmmakers that I want to work with? And Todd was one of the first ones that popped into my head. And I remember, I think I followed him on Instagram, and I was like, I'm going to message him. And I had a lot of time on my hands because I was doing this show, but I wasn't working on it very much. I just had to be there. And the money was good, but yeah. I was like, so I reached out to Todd on social media, and I was like, I'm a huge fan of yours. He responded, and it sort of went from there.
I think that's kind of badass because Todd doesn't make safe movies. You're not playing it safe. You're also like, it's not a cushy. I don't imagine it's a cushy. I don't imagine a fancy trailer.
Well, that's what I loved about him. Yeah. He's a gritty, like in your face, like unapologetic filmmaker, and that's 100% what I wanted at that time, and I've always wanted to work with him.
Well, I could see as an actor this character being really rich and interesting to dive into. Can you talk a little bit about your character and what happens in his journey in the story? Give us a little bit of an overview of that without giving too much away.
Yeah. He's, Rick, the character that I play, is sort of struggling with his sexuality. In the film, we encounter his overbearing mom who's dealing with Alzheimer's, and with his ex-wife. He has a young son. And in the midst of all of that, he is sort of addicted to going to the ramble in Central Park and cruising. And he's also a photographer. So in a way, that's a sort of a protective barrier between him and what's really happening in the park with all these guys, because he could just sort of use his camera as a sort of in between excuse not to get involved sometimes. But yeah, it's a really interesting sort of complex, character trying to figure himself out. And then in the middle of all of that, there's this sort of really creepy, scary, sort of, vampire-ish type storyline that's happening with one of the men that are in the ramble killing people. And my character encounters him and sort of has this he's sort of drawn to him, but repelled and super frightened by him as well. There's a lot going on. It was really fun diving into this film and this character.
Yeah, I get the bad guy is kind of creepy in a really cool way. Like he's got a creepy mustache and kind of but he's also a little sexy, but he's also very gay. And you're like, it ticks all the boxes. Todd, a couple of the things that I thought of when I was watching it is Cruising, obviously the Al Pacino movie, which I think you've referenced in another one of your movies as well. It kind of has that look, especially those settings, obviously. But I also thought of the John Travolta movie Blow Up because of the photography element and the sound and the mystery of it. And there were some touchstones in there. Todd, can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you were thinking about, maybe references that you were making, or maybe they were unconscious, or maybe just a coincidence?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely thinking about Antonioni's Blow Up.
Right.
And Blowout,
right.
Which, De Palma
was an update. Yeah.
Dating. Because in that film, it's really sort of about him. His character is kind of similar to Rick in this film, in that he's like using his photography to sort of distance himself from things that are happening in front of him, and also try to figure out who he is. So that really interested me. For Cruising, I was, I've always loved Cruising, but I think it's problematic for me because, the cruising scenes, it's all like Leatherman posing, and it's like, that's not what the Ramble is like at all. So I wanted to sort of recreate some of those scenes, but as they really are in real life, not this weird fantasy version.
Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to your t-shirt because I just realized it looks like it's a harness, but it's actually a shirt. I thought, Todd is rocking a harness over a shirt for this interview. I'm very flattered. It's kind of amazing.
One of my favorite t-shirts that Todd owns. Yeah. He has a lot of great t-shirts, and that's my favorite.
Yeah, it's an effective thing, and maybe a Secret Santa option for people next year for me that might be listening to this. I've never been to that part of Central Park. I live in LA. Has it always been what it is depicted, or is it like in the afternoon, that's where the girls go have tea parties, or is it all gay, all sex, all the time? What's the Ramble like?
It's so fascinating. That's another reason why I wanted to make this film and shoot it there, because to me, it feels like the whole place was designed to be a cruising area. Like it's a theme park.
Right.
Of what
it's set up for it. They have the nooks and the crannies.
I really believe it was set up for it. And that's why it is such a, it's like that 24 hours a day. During the day, it's obviously a little bit more hidden. But at night, it can be sort of a free for all. But it's, I think cruising areas like that have always fascinated me because I think there's something sacred about them. And, no matter how much they try to stop the cruising there, it's a cruising area and it will always be that. And it has that energy about it. So
do you remember the first time you went there?
Actually, I never went there until during the pandemic. I heard that it was becoming really active.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I ever went.
Yeah.
Because I'm a typical, New Yorker. I've been here since the 80s and I live in the East Village and, so I don't go above, 34th Street ever.
So Guillermo, did you have any connection to that place before then? Or have you always lived on the West Coast or area?
No, I was born and raised in New York City, in Manhattan, and Washington Heights. So, I was, I had been to the Ramble before, but I was in my 20s and I sort of didn't really know. I kept hearing stories about it, but I didn't really know how to get to that spot. It's sort of like a maze.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? You have to sort of figure it out and then you stumble upon it and you're like, oh, here it is. And so I never quite got into the spot where all the action was happening. And there's several spots. It's not just one spot. The Ramble is quite sort of large and right, Todd? I mean, there's a lot of spaces and It's not all just one clump. So I had heard about it and I did go, but I didn't really sort of get into it until Todd and I started talking, and then Todd and I would go because he was doing his sort of, his shot list and figuring out where he wanted to shoot things. And so we would go and it was sort of research for us too. I remember when we started shooting the movie, there were days that we would go to set and there'd be guys like fucking around and we'd have to be like, okay, we got to wait till they're done. This guy is getting a blowjob. So we'd wait until we're done and then we'd jump in and shoot our scenes. I mean, this happened a few times.
Guys getting blown are the leaf blowers of this project, where you're like, if we give them $20, do you think they'll turn it off for 5 seconds so we can get this shot? What is it like to shoot there? Because I know, Todd, you're kind of down and dirty filmmaker. Are you getting permits or are you running and gunning? Like, how is it working when you're shooting in Central Park?
We do not get permits. I mean, it's a public space, so you can film there whatever you want.
Right. Good.
Whenever you want. And we had a very, very small crew. There was 3 people in the crew total, including myself. Well, actually, 4 people, including myself.
Right.
So, we kept a really low profile. And, like Guillermo was saying, we went there quite a bit before we started shooting. So the great thing about that was I was able to sort of plan out the whole shoot in advance. So I had it all storyboarded. The people that in the park sort of knew me.
Right.
So it was, and, the park rangers were all very cooperative. They were like, hey, Guillermo, and you guys are back.
Right. It probably helps that you're like, kind of like, people know you and you're like, love scandal. Go ahead and shoot the anal thing today. Good luck. Best of luck.
And they had no idea what the movie was about.
Right.
It was great. But yeah, it was funny because there was something that were like, oh, half baked or scandal. Yeah.
It kind of gets you, that goodwill probably helps a lot. Todd, when Guillermo first reached out to you and talked about collaborating, what was your reaction to that, and how did you guys start to come up with the idea that you wanted to do together?
Well, I mean, I was really excited because I've been a fan of Guillermo since the very beginning. So, I mean, I was thrilled to have the opportunity to work with him. So, like I said, I'd gone to the Ramble during the pandemic, and I was sort of thinking about cruising, and I wanted to make a movie about cruising. So I sort of wrote the script with Guillermo in mind. I mean, it was, really amazing to be able to work with him, and I loved it. It's great.
And I remember I had told Todd that I'm a huge horror film fan, thrillers and all of that. And I was like, I would love to do something in that genre. And then Todd was like, I have this idea about cruising. And so he sort of, melded the two things together. And Todd is a fucking genius, man. He wrote this script, I want to say in like 4 to 6 weeks. It was super fast.
And how long was the shoot? How fast did the shoot go?
Oh my God. It was, what was it, Todd?
14 days.
Boom. There it is.
And the thing is, I never do more than 8-hour days. So, I'm organized. It's 8 hours. We get it done. And,
Todd doesn't like to work super early in the morning, and neither do I.
Right.
So
well,
I think our earliest days that we had were like 10 a.m. because one of the other actors had to sort of be out early, I think, right, Todd?
Yeah.
But we would start sort of, early afternoon-ish, I think, which is, and Todd also doesn't do a lot of takes. He's not one of those directors that does a ton of takes, which is great. Once he gets what he wants, then we move on to the next scene, which is a dream for an actor,
On the subject of cruising, I'm kind of in awe of it. Like, I came of age when sex was very scary and nothing was like, and so I was always like, it was never my thing because I just never felt like I could deliver. Like, I never felt like it would go well. That's on me. So when people can do it, like you'll see somebody on Twitter that's like, I went to this bathroom and we had successful anal sex under the stall. I am in awe. Like, I want to give them scores. Like, I'm amazed that they can do it. Like, everything works right and it is fulfilled and it works. What is it about cruising, Todd, that intrigues you? Because you've and how has that evolved over time? Because I know you've depicted it before. What is it about it that's fascinating to you?
Well, I mean, I think what's fascinating about it is, I grew up in Maine, and when I was a kid, I remember going to, the mall bathroom and seeing like things written on the wall, or
Right.
like seeing glimpses of things and like realizing like, oh, stuff happens here. And, that fascinated me. And, the whole secret, it's almost like another world, a secret society that no one else knows about. That really fascinated me. And like you were saying about, you were afraid to go cruising, but I think, the good thing about cruising is you never really had to follow through with anything, because there was always like someone would walk in or someone would come by. So there was always an excuse to stop. So you could be in the state of sexual arousal, but you never follow through with anything.
It could be all about the chase. It doesn't have to be about, I think in my head, it was have to be about, oh, you have to deliver on something.
No.
It could just be, 8 hours of chasing, and that was a fun night out.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Do you have any thoughts on this, Guillermo? Like this world generally, did it ever intrigue you at all? Or I'm a little bit in awe of it.
Yeah, I grew up in the 80s, again, like I said, in New York City. And, I was in my late teens, early 20s, mid 20s, all. And some of my first sexual experiences were cruising, like in a, or the party bathroom or in the park or wherever, because like you said, gay sex was scary at that time. It was the height of the AIDS crisis.
Right.
Even though I barely would do anything with a guy, and I was like, I for sure am HIV positive. It's that's as a gay man, you're just scared shit of sex in general. So
right.
Like Todd said, I think cruising became sort of the easy way to get off, because you could just go to a bathroom and, I'm being super explicit, just jerk off with a guy next to you in a urinal and go home. And you didn't have to do anything or touch each other. Even sometimes you would just watch and, so that's my thoughts about it.
Interesting. I like it. This is neither here nor there, but some of the finest raccoon work I've ever seen in a film in your movie. You have these raccoons right there. Like, were they just there and you're able to shoot them? Like they were ready for their close up is my point.
Well, I mean, the Raccoon Man was a character that we met when we were going to the Ramble. So I wrote him into the script.
The guy that's in those scenes is somebody you met. Yeah. Wow, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, at first we were going to cast somebody to be him, but Guillermo and I both agreed, like, no, we need to get the real Raccoon Man to be in the movie.
That's a real guy.
All the raccoons know him. They all come to him every night, and he feeds them. And there's like 50 raccoons there, but that's like really late at night, so we couldn't get them on camera because of, if you turn the lights on, they run away. So we managed to get the ones we got at sunset. But yeah, there's a lot more raccoons than that, and they all have names and they all have characters.
And he's known as Raccoon Man. Like you could go to the park right now, or he has a certain time that he goes, and he's there every single day, feeds the raccoons. He has this woman who actually cooks like a big pot of food for the raccoons, and she brings that to him to also feed them. And then there's another guy that brings food. Like it's a whole thing. Like the raccoons are his homies, that's what was so great and so fun for Todd and I think to get to use the actual person. It wasn't an actor, it was the actual guy.
Well, it's this sort of culture that's there, and these people, you see the same faces. Yeah. Would you see the same faces when you would go back? Would you see the same guys cruising, or is it more sort of local people that would sit on a bench and read the paper?
No, a lot of them were the same people. And it's funny, we met this guy who the businessman character was based sort of on. And he sort of gave me a tour and showed me some places that I didn't know and told me stories. And he was saying that, this guy, like he sits in that bench every day. That's his bench. And this guy, that's his area. So everyone has their own little spot. And so it is like a little community in and of itself. That's fascinating.
What's the police and the park rangers' attitude to that area? Are they kind of like don't ask, don't tell? Or is there a lot of harassment and arrests? Like, how do they deal with it? Because that's got a reputation for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think these days, at least as far as I know still, the police have sort of, don't ask, don't tell.
Right.
Not been involved in it, I think. But in my experience in cruising areas and different cruising areas around the country, it's funny because I used to go to the Fens in Boston, which is a notorious cruising area there. And every year, the day after Gay Pride, the cops would be there en masse, like just arresting everyone, like knocking people out. Like the day after Gay Pride.
Why the day after Gay Pride? They felt
because it's like, let's get them now.
Yeah, it's like, I can't take it in our face anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
let's beat them back.
We'll show them. Yeah, their parade. They're getting too big for their britches. Wow.
So I think that happens with cruising areas. And, there'll be somebody will decide like, oh, it's time to like go through that area and make some arrests and, like teach them a lesson. But, people start trickling back like, a couple of days later and it just gets back to normal. So
Guillermo, you set out on this adventure, reaching out to Todd with an idea of doing something different. Did this experiment live up to what you were hoping for, or in what ways did it surprise you?
Oh yeah, beyond. It lived up to what I expected and hoped for, and beyond that. It was extremely like exciting and satisfying to work with someone who I felt super safe with, who was very collaborative and super open to my ideas as well. And again, a director that's unapologetic and willing to push boundaries and all of that. So it was extremely satisfying and thrilling. And also another thing that was super exciting that we got to do is I got to sort of bring in the actress that plays my mother and the actress that plays Ren, my boss in the film, and the woman that plays my ex-wife. All those are friends of mine that I've known forever, that I've worked in films or theater or in television shows on with. And I knew how extremely talented they were. And I was like, Todd, what do you think of these women and these actors? And he loved them, and that worked really well. So that was super exciting. Their work is so amazing in the film. And Becca Blackwell also, who is an amazing trans actor, and they go by they. So can you say actor? Do you say actor, or do you say?
Yes, because I think an actor is anyone who actor
acts. Yes, it's both. And I had done a movie called Bros, the Billy film, and Becca was in that film. And I remember thinking, oh my God, when Todd and I started talking about the movie, I was like, oh my God, it'd be great if he could play, or if they could play my love interest, and they were open to it. So that was all so thrilling and exciting.
Well, everyone's really good, and they have hard things to do, especially the mother. She's dealing with dementia. She has big scenes to do that are sort of heightened, kind of melodramatic, but she grounds it. It's kind of remarkable. Guillermo, I'm going to make an observation about your career from the outside that I have no idea about. But I've interviewed a lot of gay actors, some out, some not. And there's a lot of angst around coming out and being out or not out or whatever. You seem to have moved through your career without a lot of that angst around you. Or maybe, I don't know you, I've never met you, but you seem to have been yourself and navigated your way and done what you wanted to do and not spent a lot of time about it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's super fair to say. Listen, I've always been a sort of very rebellious, bucking authority and wanting to do my own thing. So from the beginning, I had done a movie called Stonewall.
Yeah, I remember it.
In my early 20s.
It was terrific.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
And also, I was very bummed when the other Stonewall came out and nobody was really talking about this movie because it was so good. Yeah. So anyway, I was a little pissed on your behalf at the time.
Oh, yeah. It was strange because it was so close to the film that we had done. But anyway, so when I was doing press for that movie, I was told, by my team, my manager and stuff, they're going to be asking you if you're gay. So you have to figure out if you're going to say you're gay, and then that's it. Now your whole career is
and it's life and death, and everyone's scared, and everyone's you need to be freaked out about this 24/7. Yeah.
Yes. And I thought about it for a second. I was like, hell no. I'm not, imagine living my life up until now. Listen, I love Queen Latifah, but not once has she said, I am a gay woman. She's still sort of teetering around.
Right. And we're all on eggshells around.
And I sort of get it, and I love her, and I love her work. But anyway, I just knew I wasn't that guy. I wasn't that actor. So I came out super early in a magazine. I think it was called Genre, a magazine called Genre.
I used to write for Genre, yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, back in the day.
My manager at the time, too, because I had done a movie with Greg Araki where I played a gay character, and I had done Stonewall and then another gay film. And my manager sat me down once and said, listen, we have to build up your body count. He literally said that. Like, he wanted me to kill more people on film because I was doing too many gay movies. Can you believe that?
So the murderers would cancel out the gays? Like if you were playing a psycho killer?
He thought if you play a lot more tough characters and kill people on film, because I was also playing a lot of thugs at the time.
Right.
Anyway, so I just never forgot that he said you have to build up your body count. I was like, that's so fucked up. That's so messed up.
But it strikes me that you never, like, there was never a lot of strum and drang within you around it. That's so good. Yeah.
Because I sort of moved forward thinking, listen, if somebody doesn't want to work with me, oh, well, fuck it. And, I had that young sort of naivete. I wasn't thinking too far in the future. I was like, oh, I'm going to make it no matter what. I don't care. And sure enough, I started, like, I remember being on Weeds and even Half Baked, and Chappelle knew my boyfriend, and my boyfriend had come to set. And like on Weeds, Mary Louise Parker I remember giving her a copy of my Pinups magazine. I had done Pinups magazine where I was naked and with 27 pages, and it was an underground magazine in New York. And Mary Louise was like, sign one for, like, everybody's just been super accepting, and it never affected me negatively. So I've been super fortunate.
Yeah, it seems like you did great. And I think there were people that were probably on your same journey that a lot of angst around it, a lot of second guessing, turning things down, and like the personal toll it took. And it sounds like to me you were like, I need to be authentic. It's not worth the price.
Yeah, totally.
Todd, do you have any observations about that world? Because I'm sure you've worked with other actors and seen other actors, or
I think actors are very suspicious or superstitious. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, oh, if this one thing like might get in my way, like I better push that aside. Or and I think there is a lot of pressure from agents and managers to don't say that, don't do this, don't do that, like trying to like. And I admire actors like Guillermo who are just like, this is who I am, and I don't give a shit what you think. Yeah. I'm here to work, and that's what's important, and that's what should be important.
Yeah.
Like, the work is important. It doesn't matter who you're sleeping with or anything like that.
Right. Like, I understand.
And I've always been like that with casting too. I've since my very first movie, I've cast trans actors or cast colorblindly, or gender. What the gender didn't matter of characters. So I think that is what we should all be concentrating on, not.
Yeah. Now, Todd, I read in your bio, I think it says you've made 35 films, and then I was on IMDb, and I think you have 60 directing credits. I know people, myself included, I've made a few short films, and you put all your thing into it, and you pay your own money, or you raise money or whatever, and maybe you have a great experience, and maybe you do too. And you're like, and then other things get away. You keep going. What is that? What is it in you that keeps you going? Because it's not easy to make these projects. And I really admire that you have stuck with it.
Thank you. I mean, I think for me, it's always, I love making films. I love working on them. And, when I'm finishing a project, I'm like, okay, I need to do something else. So I think it's from going to art school. I mean, I went to Rhode Island School of Design, and, we were, the way we were taught there is like, you have to challenge yourself and do what you love and make it work and figure it out. And so that's what I've done my whole life. It's like, okay, I want to make another movie. I only have, a couple $100 to do it. So I'm going to do it this way. Or if I have a little bit more, I've made a little bit more money for my last movie, I'm going to put that into the next one. And, I think that's the key to sustaining yourself, is just figuring out how you can keep doing things and just keep doing them. And don't think about like, who's this movie for? Or what is it going to be? Like, just make movies for yourself and, make the things you want to make.
Was there
ever...
And
the rest is out of your control, yeah.
The rest is always going to be out of your control, so...
Was there ever a time when you were trying to court sort of more mainstream acceptance of success? Like, I'm going to get into Sundance with this one. Or did you ever sort of do that? Or were you always like, I'm going to do my thing, come hell or high water, and what happens, happens. And if those doors open, great.
It was really interesting because after I made Frisk, I made a movie called Little Shots of Happiness that I filmed on Hi8 video. So I sort of got caught up in the whole like digital revolution, sort of Dogma 95 thing.
Right.
So I was getting, all this press. I was in Time magazine. I was on TV shows talking about it and stuff. And I was like, wow, this is going to be great. I'm going to get like, the phone's going to be ringing off the hook. Hollywood's going to become calling.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
Nobody, nothing. Silence.
That is a recurring theme in this podcast, by the way. That idea comes up a fair amount in my conversations. Right. But you learn from that.
I learned from that. Like, wow, okay. Like, and my idols are, people like the Kuchar brothers and, Andy Warhol. And, they just did stuff because they wanted to do it. They didn't give a shit if it made money or anything like that. So like that's what I'm going to do. And I've had, I've had meetings with Hollywood people I remember meeting with, cause, indie horror was going to be a big thing after, Wes Craven's movie,
Scream. Scream.
After Scream. Yeah. After Scream, it was like, every indie studio is going to make like horror movies. So I met with, I think New Line or somebody, and we were talking about different projects and talking and meeting. I'm like, okay, this is so boring. I just want to make a damn movie.
Right.
And like, of course, nothing ever happened with it. So I just made my own stuff.
So you've made all these movies. What's the part you love the most? What's the part where you're like, oh, this is the editing. I love this part. Like, where's the biggest like rush come from?
I think the biggest rush comes from filming, from
when
shooting.
You're actually on the set.
Yeah, because, I love writing and preparing, and I love to be, I like to be as prepared as possible and be prepared for anything that's going to happen and just be organized. I think that's the key to directing, is to being extremely organized. So I like that. But then when you're shooting, I love the fact that like things just get thrown at you and you have to figure it out. And like you have to really like, all of your brain has to be working, and it's exhausting and exciting, and it's great. And when I'm done with that, I rest for 2 months,
right.
And then I get and that. I mean, I love editing too, because it's a different kind of like, okay, this isn't working. I've got to make it work. I've got to figure it out.
Yeah.
So, but I think like physically, I love shooting because it's just
being on the set and
I love being on the set.
Shooting the movie. What's your favorite part, Guillermo, of these processes?
I think the same thing, being on set and doing the work, because like Todd said, stuff comes up and that you have to deal with, and you can't plan too much, especially with this type of movie and with this type of director, and how we were shooting the film in the short amount of time, and things like Todd said would happen, and we would have to deal with them, and just the excitement, the excitement of taking risks when you're doing a scene and working with the actors that we have in our movie. That was easy to do with them because they're all very experienced and excellent actors. So yeah, being on set and doing the work is my favorite part always.
What did you end up doing after this? Have you been back to other bigger budget kind of like mainstream stuff since you've done this?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think I want to say not the pandemic. The pandemic happened it was happening during the movie. We had to have a COVID compliance officer with us. What did I do after? I don't remember what I did after. I started doing the Scandal Rewatch podcast, which I'm still doing.
Right on.
And then I think I did a few more Law and Orders, Organized Crime, which I was doing while we were shooting the movie.
But what's it like to go from something where it's kind of like down and dirty like this, and you're one of the producers, to like, oh, here's your nice trailer. We'll see you in a few minutes, Mr. Diaz. And like, is it seamless?
It's sort of depressing in a way because you don't have the same freedoms, and it's not
right.
As exciting. I mean, some stuff is exciting, but
right.
It's just different. All that all that sort of, raw creativity and all that shit is sort of gone out the window a little bit. You know what I mean? When you do like big projects, because there's so many people involved, so many opinions, all that crap.
And the good craft service doesn't quite make up for the fact that you're just not having as much fun as a creative person.
Exactly. Yeah. Listen, we had great craft service on.
Yeah. No disrespect to your craft service. I'm sure it's quite good. You mentioned Scandal. You were on that show. It was a big deal. A Shonda Rhimes show. My perception from the outside about Shondaland is it seemed like a world where people that didn't always get the chances got the chances. Is that fair to say? I think that in terms of writers and actors and stuff, is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. It's fair to say. Yeah. Exhibit A is me. The fact that she cast a gay Latino from, Washington Heights as this, trained killer spy, on a show for ABC is just, normally I remember getting that audition and being pissed off because I was like, you guys, what are you doing? I'm never going to get this. And they were like, just go in. And I had one audition with Shonda and the producers, and she cast me after seeing me one time.
She just had an instinct that you were the right person for it. But it feels like the idea of what's possible is bigger there in terms of the vision is bigger and you feel it. That's really cool.
I remember Shonda talking about the Bailey, the lead character of Grey's Anatomy, played by Chandra, which is different from Chandra Wilson. It was supposed to be Kristen Chenoweth. and she ended up seeing this amazing, African-American actress come in and do the audition. And she was like, nope, she's the one. So Shonda, thank goodness, is very open and like Todd casts blindly and just wants the best actor for the role. And that's super refreshing. And again, she has the power to do that, because on other shows and other movies, the network would be like, no, you have to cast Kristen Chenoweth.
Right.
But Shonda's like, no, I don't, motherfucker.
Right.
I'm casting who the fuck I want. And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
Their shows are huge hits.
Yeah. See the sign that says Shondaland. That's
exactly. Yeah. But how lucky are we that she's able to do that?
Yeah. And the fans of that show were a particular variety. Like they were super into it. Do you still feel the fandom from that?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Like every week someone will come up to me and talk about the show the fans are super hardcore. The gladiators, as we call them.
Yeah. They have their name. They're into it. And it was like an early Twitter show. That was one of the first Twitter shows.
We were the first show that live tweeted on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Kerry Washington asked us all to get on Twitter because our numbers weren't doing very well after the first few episodes. We were sort of on the bubble, I think they call it, where you're on the verge of being canceled. And we all got on Twitter and started live tweeting. And then all of a sudden, our numbers rose and we got a second season.
What was it like to tweet? Because I don't love Twitter. Like some people really take to that kind of thing. What was it like for you? Were you kind of into it, or was it like, I guess I got to do this?
Yeah, a little bit. But back in the day, it was fun because Twitter was a different animal. Now there's a lot of negativity and it's political and people are angry and it's such a downer now. But back then, it was fun. You could interact, at the moment while you're watching the show. We would live tweet with fans and be like, oh my God, this is what I was, doing or feeling while I was shooting this scene. It was super exciting.
It was fun to be a part of that.
Yeah.
In the moment, in real time.
Yeah.
Speaking of pop culture, Todd, I appreciate your Rick Astley reference in the film. I also appreciate Eyes of Laura Mars shout out. I'm into that. There's a song also in your movie that's the title of the piece. Talk to me about the song and the title of the movie.
Well, the title sort of came about because one of the times when I was in the Bramble, there were some cops sort of not really harassing people, but just sort of telling people like, you can't stay here. You can't stay here.
Yeah.
They kept saying like, that's the title.
That's the title. But I think it's something we've all heard somebody say to us. Like when I read that, I was like, I felt something, right? Because I think, especially at like Hollywood parties, it's like, no, you're not in the right, you can't stay. This is not for you. You need to go somewhere else. I think we've all felt that.
And it also means a lot for Rick's character because, he can't stay with his ex-wife. He can't stay with his mother. He can't stay, so he's sort of trying to figure out where he fits in.
Right.
And who he is. So it worked that way. So for the title came first, and then I was like, we need to have a scene in a piano bar. So my friend John O'Manelli, who's been in a few of my movies, he's a musical theater guy. He writes music and plays music. I was like, let's write a song together. So we worked on the lyrics together, and he came up with the music. And I was like, okay, and you would need to perform it in the bar.
When I heard it, I thought, is this an old song that I just didn't know? And they've taken the lyric from that. You wrote a classic song that sounds like it could be, from that era. I love it.
Well, that's the great thing about Jono is he knows so much about musical theater that, he's like, it's going to be from this time period. I don't remember exactly what he's like. It should be from this time period and this kind of style. I'm like, okay, sounds good to me. Let's do it.
Now, Todd, you've depicted sex a lot in your movies. It's been a subject of a number of your things. How have your views about it evolved?
Yeah, that's a tough question because, sex has always been something that I've been fascinated by. And, the sort of darker side of it, I've always been fascinated by because I've had, a personal history that's a little dark. So that's something I've always been fascinated by and interested in. I think as I get older, I'm getting more romantic.
Well, there's a love story in this piece as well. And I think that's part of it. And I was like, oh, there's kind of a sweet thing there. And that's kind of what made me want to ask this question.
Yeah. So I think, personally, I'm coming around to the other side of the lighter side of sex and the more romantic side of sex, but still, sex.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
This is for both of you. In 10 years or so, when you look back on this movie, is there a moment you'll always remember as like, oh, that moment on that day, whether it's showing it or shooting it, or just a moment about the process that you think you'll always remember?
I think for me, just filming in the Ramble, it was just such an amazing experience. Every day we filmed there for, I think, 8 days. So, it was tough when we were in a location other than that, because, it was so nice just being there and being in that atmosphere. And that's something I'll always remember is that experience of filming in the park.
Interesting.
It was like summer camp, but, for adults.
With Popper. It was summer camp with poppers, basically.
With poppers.
Yeah. What will you always remember, Guillermo?
For me, I think I'll always remember the fact that I took a chance and reached out to a director that I wanted to work with, and I was scared to do that, and he responded positively, and yeah, I'm just super proud of myself that again I reached out to a director I adore and love his work, and I got to it all worked out, and we made it happen. It sort of taught me that. It's now or never, right? That's what Elvis said. That's when Showgirls, Todd.
Right.
It's now or never. Just go for it now in the moment. And because if not, you're going to regret it. And I'm so glad I did.
I think it's so cool that you did that, because I think there are people that would have a profile like yours, a career like yours, whose worlds would get smaller, who would get more scared. But you're the opposite. You're like, I'm going to go do this movie and, I think that's cool. I don't think that everybody's like that. Kudos. Yeah. Have you always been that kind of person? Have you always been
sort of? Yeah. My managers hate me because I'll like that.
Of course, but that's the coolest.
I'm the nightmare client. Yeah.
Because you don't play that safe. You don't always go for the money gigs. But
yes.
But I don't know. I could be wrong about this. But if you took the person that did what you did, that approached their career like that, and put them next to the person that played it safe, was calculated, thought about money, I don't think you would look at their careers and go, they were that much different. And I bet you probably had a lot more fun. You probably had a lot less sleepless nights. You probably feel better about your life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. How boring that the alternative, right? How boring.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky. Do what you love. Yeah.
Do what you love.
You have a good time doing it. That's the thing with me is if I'm not having fun doing a project, why am I bothering with this?
Yeah, I love it. This is probably going to be the last show of 2023 for me in this podcast. So for both of you, I'd love to hear what's a highlight of 2023 for you.
For me, it was we went to Mexico City and we had our world premiere there You Can't Stay Here.
Because my highlight is going to be Mexico City, so keep going.
No way.
I actually had never been to Mexico before.
Yeah.
And it was me and my partner, who's also the producer and assistant director, James Kleinman.
Oh, yeah, who has a role in this as a British guy in a bow tie, which he was born to play. I know James, so yeah, we love James. So you guys went.
Guillermo went as well, and we just had the best time. It was so amazing. I really loved it there, and I want to go back.
Yeah, I fell in love with the city. That would have been my highlight as well. What about for you, Guillermo? What's the highlight of the year?
That really quickly before I say my highlight, we had a tour guide who his specialty, he took us around to all the popular cruising areas in Mexico City. And that was amazing. That was crazy. The cruising in Mexico City is so much other level.
Next
level shit that you would never imagine.
Yeah.
Compared to how we do it.
Yeah.
It was fucking exhilarating. It was so good.
Is the tour guide's name happen to be Saul Franco?
No.
Oh, different one?
I want to meet Saul Franco.
No, he was my tour guide when I went there, and he does a tour like that. I didn't happen to do that. I did like the downtown thing. It was super cool. But I had him on the podcast, and he's a gay tour guide down there. Diversa Tours, by the way, if you're going there. But that's one of the tours that he offers. So there's multiple cruising tours in Mexico City. Yeah. Good to know.
Well, and this gentleman also took us to the churches and the different spots that were in cruising, museums and all that.
Right on.
One of the biggest highlights for me was getting to direct my first indie feature film. Like I directed a film in April. Well, I guess that's not 2023 because we're in the process now of finishing post-production, But yeah, I got to direct my first movie and it was super challenging and exciting. And I don't know how Todd does it, but I really loved being behind the camera, behind the scenes. And yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, I was reading about that. It's called Dear Luke. Is that right?
Yeah. Dear Luke Love Me. Yeah.
Yeah. And what can you tell us about it?
It's a sort of a dysfunctional, sort of quirky love story between two platonic friends that turns romantic and then back to platonic. And one of the characters discovers he's asexual. So he doesn't like to have sex. And it's beautifully written by my friend Mally McCowan. And there's animation in it, which is so beautiful. And yeah, it was super exciting.
What surprised you about directing? What was different than you thought?
How fucking everybody turns to you for answers. Like you have to answer people in every department. What size do you want this? Do you want this camera angle? Do you want, what color do you want the shirt to be? Like, I was like, oh my God, can't you figure it out yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. You just have to answer so many questions.
And Todd is nodding. Yeah.
That's the key. Yeah. You just have to have an answer, even if you don't know.
Yes.
Have an answer.
Yes.
I directed a few shorts and I would love to direct a features one day. My thoughts are that it's a little like falling in love when it's going well. It's almost delirious, like you're in love. My other thought was it's exhausting. Like I did a 2-day shoot. I could have stayed in bed for a week. How do people do long shoots physically? I guess you get used to it. But I was like, I feel like I've been hit by a truck.
Oh yeah, my shoot was about 21 days, and we were shooting in Richmond, Virginia, so we weren't even close to home. And yeah, it was grueling, man. I was fucking exhausted every single day.
And you're editing it now. You're putting it together now, so hopefully people can watch it.
We have a locked cut. Yeah, we have a locked cut, and now we're just sort of doing color correction and sound design and all of that.
Yeah. It sounds like from you guys talking that you became friends as well as collaborators in this process. Is that fair to say? Wouldn't it be funny if you said no?
Right? No, we totally did. I feel so much closer to Todd, and I love him dearly. And yeah, I'm so glad he's in my life. Yeah, and James as well.
And you just took a chance on Instagram. You just sent him a DM. That's yeah.
And there wasn't a penis involved.
No, it was just a straight thing. What did you say in the thing? Hey, I like your work. Maybe we can do something together.
That's exactly right.
Because you can't write a long DM. DMs are meant to be short. You can't go on and on, right? So it's basically that. I love it. All right.
I think we met and we had a really long 2-hour lunch where I think we both sort of felt each other out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need, I kind of knew like right from the bat, like, okay, this is going to work.
I'm going to share briefly my highlight of 2023 because it's involving Mexico City. So I had never been. I'd been wanting to go for a long time. It would be on my dream board every year. And then finally, I kind of pulled the trigger. I didn't have a ton of money, but I'm like, I'm just going to do this. And I was able to do the time. And I'd been taking Spanish online with a tutor once a week for the last 2.5 years. And I got to meet my tutor in Puebla, Mexico. And I just remember Cinco de Mayo walking around town with my tutor and trying to speak in Spanish and doing okay. And first of all, her name's Denise. And if anyone needs a tutor for Zoom, she's delightful. And she's kind of a goddess. Like, because on Zoom, you don't see people's profiles or their body. And I'm like, you're kind of a movie star. Like, it's like, are you Penelope Cruz? Like, what's happening? So we're walking around and I'm just using my Spanish and we're in this charming town. And I had a blast in Mexico City. And I was like, I think that was my highlight, that moment. And like, I have pictures that I was taking on that day and I just look really happy. And I think because it was cool, but also I kind of made it happen. Like I kept taking chances and like pulling the trigger and there I was. And also it turns out that this tutor is like one of my favorite people. So that would be my highlight. So yay for Mexico City. If you're listening to this and you haven't gone, you need to go because it's awesome. Mm-hmm. Tell people how they can see your movie, Todd, because I know it's showing in New York soon, right?
Yeah, it opens in New York City on January 5th at the IFC Center. And Guillermo and I and some other members of the cast will be doing Q&As for select shows. So come and check it out if you're in New York. And it'll hopefully be playing in LA sometime in February. And then it'll be playing everywhere soon. So
I love that. All right. And here's my final question. It's for both of you, but it's kind of a little bit different. I want to know from Todd, why do you make films? And Guillermo, why do you act? Like, why do you guys do this stuff?
I make films because I love making films. And it's the only thing that I want to do. That's
it. And you've been doing it for a while. Has the technology changing helped you in this journey? Is it easier now to do it than it was when you started?
Definitely. I mean, it's easier, but I love technology and I love advances and I love experimenting with the newest products and things. So to me, it's always exciting when a new camera comes out or a new editing system or all that stuff. So that's one of the things I love too, is just playing with the different technologies.
And it's your thing. You're just going to do it until you can't do it anymore.
I dropped it. Yeah.
Until you drop dead. Guillermo, why do you do what you do?
Same reason. I don't know how to do anything else well, to be honest. And, listen, I love acting, but now I've fallen in love with directing and producing and, being behind the camera as well. And that's really exciting too. I just love being an artist, and there's nothing else I'd want to do. Just like Todd. Yeah.
I love it. Well, you guys, this has been a really fun conversation. Congrats on your creepy, interesting movie. And I hope people go see it. And I hope it has a big life ahead of it and that a lot of people can see what you guys did together. So thanks for doing the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks again to Todd and Guillermo. If you're in New York, go see their movie. You Can't Stay Here. If you're not in New York, watch for it. Hopefully it will come somewhere to you in 2024. All right, so this happened. This is the last episode of the year of Dennis Anyone, and I want to thank everyone for listening and for the generous tips that I've gotten throughout the year and all the great conversations. I've really had some great conversations this year. So for this happened, I'm going to share something that I'm thinking of possibly embarking on for 2024. I don't know yet. It's early days in terms of my thought process, but I'm going to share this because maybe it'll spark something and you might find it interesting. So as you know, I do different things to make a living. I do writing sometimes and interviewing, and I have my virtual games that I host and my Lifecast business that I do. And, I'm piecing together things, but it doesn't always add up to quite enough. I'm managing. But there's a feeling of like, maybe there's something more for me out there. Maybe there's something, I need to do something. And so one day a few months ago, I woke up in the morning as if from a dream with this very clear sentence in my head, like a directive. And it was, I need to go back to school and I need to study positive psychology. It was like a billboard that I had read. Maybe I dreamt it, but it was very clear in my brain, that sentence, that sentiment. Maybe it's a couple of sentences. So the field of positive psychology is something I've been interested in for probably like 7 or 8 years. The idea of what makes people happy and the science behind that. And there is a growing field of actual academics and people that have studied this. There are things like the Happiness Lab podcast. I took a Science of Wellbeing course through Yale online during the pandemic, and it kind of changed my life. And my first exposure to it was a talk at the Writers Guild in 2016. This producer, Lindsay Duran, gave a talk about filmmaking and storytelling. It was for the writers, and she talked about meeting a writer and a professor named Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, who is sort of considered the father of psychology, positive psychology, and how his principles sort of connected to storytelling and sort of the idea of, he wrote a book called Learned Optimism, where you can sort of, if you're not naturally optimistic, you can learn it and it might help you in your life. And I picked up that book and it really helped me. And a lot of these principles have helped me navigate sort of the ups and downs of life. And also, if you're at a point where you're like, I don't have what I want, and I thought getting what I want was going to make me happy. Well, I don't have it. Am I just not going to be happy, or can I be happy anyway? And that's sort of been my project the last few years. And I'm happy to say that, yeah, I think you can. I don't think you have to get all the stuff you want. I don't think that's where the happiness is. So anyway, these are principles that have resonated a lot in my life and that I've applied, some of these tools that I've read about, and they've really helped me. I think they've been game changers for me. So anyway, so I'm thinking, I woke up in the morning with this idea of I need to go back to school and study this. And I've done a little bit of exploration around where people might study this. I know the University of Pennsylvania, like I said, is like the main place, and there's a few others, and I don't know how much it costs, whatever. So I'm like, I'm not going to go to Pennsylvania. I can't move at this point. So I start sort of Googling, and it turns out that the University of Pennsylvania has a master's program where you don't have to move there. You go 6 weekends over the year, like 3 weekends a semester for sort of intensive weekend sessions of classes, and then the rest is done either virtually or you do things on your own. And then anyway, you can get a master's degree in a year in positive psychology. In the summer, you do what's called your capstone project. Anyway, it's a doable thing. You go to Philadelphia 6 times in the year, and at the end of the year after your project, you get your master's degree in positive psychology. I don't know what it would do for me. I don't know if there are any jobs that you get, but it's something that I'm interested in, and I feel a pull to it. And it's located in Philadelphia. And I remember when I that morning when I started Googling it and I saw, oh, there's this program that you don't have to move there. I'm intrigued. And I thought, oh, I have friends that live in Philadelphia. My friends Scott and Victor, they used to live in New York. And I've stayed with them a few times in New York. And I was like, maybe I can see them if I go to Philadelphia, or maybe they'll let me stay with them. Like, it was like the Scott and Victor was kind of in my head. And the very next day, after I had this, woke up with this feeling, I get a postcard from my friend Scott, and it's a picture of Elton John from the Royal Gallery in London, where I think he had recently visited. And Scott wrote on the postcard, I saw this and I thought I needed to send it to you for some reason. Hope you're well, Scott. That's all it said. And I was like, ooh, maybe that's a sign about Philadelphia. Because I was just thinking about them in relation to this possible academic journey. So anyway, I'm thinking about doing that. It's expensive, and I might be able to figure, I don't know. I have to figure this thing out. But any kind of grad school, I suppose, is expensive. Maybe you get loans. I'm not sure. Anyway, the application, I think, is due in March. So I'm going to explore that in the next couple of months, and I'm sharing that with you because I feel like it. I don't know why, but maybe it'll resonate. Maybe someone will be like, I know someone that did that or whatever. But, I could still do a lot of my other things while I'm doing it. And I don't know. I feel like I want this next chapter of my life to be bigger and newer and different and still resonate with all the other stuff I like to do, like this podcast, for example. So anyway, that's my big thing. Going into 2024, I'm going to explore this idea maybe if I don't do it this year, there's another time I can do it. I don't know. Thinking about it. There it is. All right. That's enough for this week. That's enough for this year. There I said it. I want to thank Oscar Rosario for mixing the episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for placement music. And I want to thank all of you guys for listening this year. It really means a lot to me. We'll see you next year on Dennis Anyone. Bye.